Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the HR Revolution or Evolution, no matter what way we look at it today. Business is changing, but so is HR. People's demands of what they're looking for in their employer or who they choose to work for is changing. We try to address these challenges and concerns and maybe gaps that you're experiencing today through conversations with thought leaders like Jim Malvaso today. At a world-renowned organization, Constellation Brands, we try to learn through conversations with HR practitioners and professionals, as well as other industry experts, so you can start to apply this in your day job to enable your success and maybe provide more value, not only to the business, but also to the employees at the end of the day. So with me today, I have my buddy, Chris Darone.
Thank you, Kevin. And as Kevin mentioned, everybody, really excited to be back for another episode of the HR Evolution. As Kevin mentioned, our guest today is Jim Malvaso. He's the Senior Vice President of Human Resources with Constellation Brands, international producer and marketer of beer, wine, and spirits. And we did some homework, Jim. While your educational background may be in industrial and labor relations, you obviously have honed your HR experience and expertise over the course of your career with companies such as Corning, Danaher, and Garlock. On behalf of Kevin and myself, Jim, thanks for taking time out with us to join us, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. Glad to be here, and good to be chatting with you here today. So thanks.
Awesome, Jim. And we're going to kind of start right into just learn a little bit about you. It looks like you're at home today, but it looks like typically HR practitioners, professionals, it's not believed that we have lives outside of work. Clearly, it looks like you do. So we're just going to learn a little bit more about you, the individual and the person. So if you and I were to head out tonight to go to your favorite restaurant spot, where are we headed here in Rochester, New York, or globally?
Oh my gosh, great question. So I'm a big fan of Italian food. So Pane Vino is great. Enjoy Red as well, although they don't, not necessarily all Italian, but Pane Vino for Italian food, and then Red just does a great job with their cuisine. So really enjoy that, getting out and about. So that we'd be heading there, probably enjoying a cocktail, and then probably a bottle of wine over some great food. So that would be.
I was waiting for you to bring in the California Reds, to that conversation. So
absolutely.
Jim, based on a conversation you had previously with Kevin and Tyler White, I learned that you're a Dave Matthews fan. So if you had to pick out your favorite DMB tune, which one would it be?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. He's got so many great songs. I'm a big fan of seeing Dave live. So any song that they play live is fantastic. Big fan of The Warehouse, that song, that tune, Two Step, Number 41, Bartender. Those are all some great tunes. So enjoyed listening to them and the band jam to those songs.
Those are some classics. I love it. Thank you.
Those are some classics. Too bad Tyler's not on today to play some of those violin solos there. But
that's right.
Well, the other thing is that I think we can learn not only a lot about people from the music that they listen to, but also some of the movies that they watch. We obviously have put really going to the movie theaters on pause, but Jim, what was one of your favorite movies of all time that you saw in theaters?
Oh gosh, I'll go back a few years. Tombstone was a great movie.
Yeah.
It kind of was back in my college days, and then we'd hit the rerun and watch that all the time. It seemed like in our dorm rooms. But Tombstone was a classic. Really enjoyed that. Tommy Boy was another one. Whenever I want to have a laugh. I've got my kids who are in high school introduced to that, and they just think it's the funniest movie. Yeah. So it's a movie that stood the test of time, which is cool.
It definitely has. We've actually used Tommy Boy clips in some of our sales training classes that we've done. So great movie. All right, let's jump into this, Jim. And I think one of the things that we've been talking a lot about on our show is, as we look to transition and find out what the new ways of working are, we put ourselves in a lot of what I'll call environments or conditions that maybe we weren't so comfortable with. So long way of getting to my question for you is, I think the importance of having someone there to help us, through these transitions, help us navigate what we need to do, whether it's a formal mentor you may have or an informal mentor. Who are the people that you look up to that have helped you or maybe are helping you even now today, as you kind of navigate to take on what's next within the organization? And then, what do you look to provide those individuals who maybe are looking up to you for, kind of a mentor type of relationship?
Yeah, so I've always looked to, my manager, speak to him specifically at Constellation. He's been my manager for 8 years, and he's been an advocate of mine through that time, and so grateful for all the mentorship and friendship and guidance that he's provided me. I've had an opportunity to move into a couple of different roles, in my time at Constellation, and it's always, with his recommendations and perspectives. And so I'm very grateful to have somebody like him as a mentor over these past few years. So, and then I try to do the same with my team, right? I'm a big believer in supporting the development of the folks that are around me. And I have a great team of leaders that are up and comers within the organization. And, I like to push them and challenge them just like I have been. And, it's fun to see, when you put the challenge out in front of somebody, how they aspire to succeed, and it's helpful to guide them and provide some perspective along the way. But that's probably one of the most rewarding things that I think I do and we do collectively as leaders, is to help see our team and help mentor folks to achieve their aspirations.
Love that. And I think you brought up one of my favorite words is leader, right? Leadership today is really one of those words that we see frequently or infrequently within HR, right? And I've worked for organizations that do not have, I guess, as robust of an HR department or a relationship within the business to ask what they need or want, or the employees to help them with that scenario or situation. And leadership is kind of something that I know is a passion of yours, Jim. But in order to become a leader, we have to build trust. We have to build accountability. So can you take us back to maybe that first job at Corning, or maybe the first kind of couple of days or months in your role there at Constellation Brands, that you built those types of internal relationships necessary to get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about your brand and, who are you and what do you stand for as a person, as an individual. So you can have, all the schooling and, the education behind you, but, what you deliver to an organization, what you help them achieve, all speaks to, the characteristics that, you have as an individual. And so, for me, it was always around building, positive working relationships with folks. And I would do so by listening, trying to understand challenges that they may be encountering, and then come up with thoughtful solutions on how to assist and help them, whatever the challenge may be. And, you're building sort of the trust and respect of your counterparts is so important. So you got to deliver what you say you're going to deliver. So don't overpromise and underdeliver. And so I feel like by going in and doing those things, whether it was at Corning, whether it was at US West when I first came out of grad school, I always had a mind towards, making sure I put my best foot forward and building those relationships and doing what I said I was going to do. And with that came, the accolades of, well, this is someone that gets something done. Doesn't take a lot of bureaucracy to work with Jim. Is able to really reach out and connect with people in a positive way. All those things I feel like have carried me through in all the roles that I've had. And it's allowed me to, achieve some fun positions, along the way. So.
Yeah. So important. And I think like the thing that you said is all of that requires you to have time, I think, Jim, right? It's like, so in order, you can't be bogged down in just the administrative tactical processes that could very easily get bogged down with, right? It seems like you are available for those discussions and conversations and those one-on-ones to really understand what motivates them on an individual level, to meet them really where they are, and find those solutions to their problems that they're facing every day, and not assuming what challenges that they may be facing. I love that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
That's
It's an
great.
investment in time, right? I mean, it's an investment in time, and I think it's making people feel valued, for whatever circumstances that they're encountering. And so if you're authentic in that way and listen, making those connections and finding solutions, with whatever problem that people may be experiencing, happens pretty, can happen pretty easily. So.
Yeah.
You want to share just real quick? Could you share any of the questions that you start with when you are first trying to learn, I guess, what challenges they're facing? Any questions that come to mind that some HR practitioners or professionals could start using like today?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think one is, I've always start with, do you know the individual? Do you understand the business? I like to do a little bit of a, just as you guys did with me, just tell me a little bit about you. I think, making some of those connections on a personal level is important. It is for me. It makes me feel that connection to somebody that I'm working with. But then it's just all about, listening, help me understand, what you do. What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing today with your team, within the function that you're leading? And then based on what they say, it's all about follow-up and probing. And I think that is also a way in which, we as HR practitioners can show that we're listening. So you kind of follow up with additional questions and really kind of pinpoint some of the pain points that they may be experiencing. But open-ended questions are great, and just get people talking. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
I think one of the things, Jim, that we've seen over the past 2 years, again, 750 people roughly, you said, in the corporate office there, and now we're all working from home. And I think that's kind of changed the dynamic from a management standpoint and a leadership standpoint. We're almost redefining leadership in this new world. Are there any things that maybe you did at Constellation, or any specific areas around the topic of leadership that maybe you focused on, either from an executive team or even down into the management team, that you could share with us that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 2 years have been very challenging for businesses and leaders. We have an environment where, in manufacturing, we had to be on the front lines. And so working remotely wasn't an option. And so, that had its own challenges and trying to stay safe and keep people working in a productive way. On the other side, we have folks that, work in the corporate offices that have been primarily working from home. And so that's also had its set of challenges. And I think one of the things that we've really pushed on our folks is to give people some grace and time to, manage and balance, the work and the home life, whether it be caring for kids or adult, parents, whatever it was. We really tried to give people the space to do that as effectively as they can, because the demands for the job were immense. People felt like they couldn't close their computers. They always had to be in front of them. And so, we continued to try to emphasize, being able to take time for yourselves, vacation, at 5 o'clock, turn it off, whatever it is, as a leader, we felt that was important to make those connections with our teams. So, I felt like, specifically, having those conversations up front to understand what challenges that they have, just put everything on the table so that, we can have open and honest dialogue around that. What is and continues to be important. We're not completely through this, although it does feel like we're getting toward the end of the tunnel as people start to come back to the offices, which is great. And so I know a lot of folks are excited to kind of get back into seeing each other more regularly. We have a great culture where we like to do happy hours and those sorts of things, throughout the weeks at the end of the day. And I know people are really looking forward to kind of making those connections. So we try to do those things, remotely, virtually, happy hours and fun little events on Zoom and WebEx, and just to kind of keep those connections going, and just, have a little fun with folks. So all those little things, I really felt like have helped us, survive, through all this. I think that we're going to have some interesting challenges ahead, as we've either been working remote or we've been in the office. And now we're truly going to have a hybrid scenario where you have more people coming into the office, but yet you're still going to have a good population of folks that are working remote. And that's going to present a whole nother level of challenges for managers and leaders. So we're talking about that now. I wouldn't say that we've got the, the silver bullet to kind of fix all that, but, it's something that's on our minds as we're looking to the next few months, again, as people start to come back into the office. So.
Really cool. And it seems like you guys have your pulse on the employee, right? And really ensuring that you have those open lines of communication and opportunities, I guess, for them to share their feedback and insights with you. And you guys are smart enough to actually listen and utilize that to your advantage. One of the things that you mentioned, like the challenge and we have a great culture. One of the challenges with culture I have found is that with finance and sometimes with senior leadership, they don't understand culture in its entirety, right? Because it does constantly change, right? How are you? I know in kind of doing our homework on you, you mentioned that you continually show how HR is adding to the bottom line of the organization. Can you kind of get into that where you show the effectiveness of maybe a program or a type of communication that you rolled out and just ways that you are proving that from a data and financial perspective of the impact that you and your team are having on the bottom line there at Constellation Brands?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of areas that, we have within HR that we do some of those things. I mean, I guess I'll speak to, our talent acquisition function. We have an in-house group and a number of recruiters and sourcers that help us fill roles within the organization. Conversely, organizations can go externally and use outside agencies to fill roles. And that also has its costs associated with it. Doing so in-house, is more favorable from a cost perspective for us. And so, we've been able to showcase through the years that adding additional resources on our team versus going outside to fill roles with an agency is more cost effective. And so that's sort of a level of analysis we do, throughout the year to show, all right, what roles have we filled, internally. And there are times where we do have to go outside to use an agency just because we might not have the particular expertise or it's a certain level in the organization that we need to go outside and fill that. But so we balance those, conversely and showcase, where the value is by hiring the right people and having the size of group that we do to be able to support the needs that we have within the organization. So, Kevin, that's one example, that I can speak to. We do the same as we look at, our development programs and training programs. Do we build with an agency outside, or do we do some of that development in-house? Again, the cost benefits, are a little bit more beneficial if we do so in-house versus always going externally. So those are decisions that we make, throughout the year and as we, plan for our budget. So we're a cost center as an HR function, but the key is what we deliver and the quality of programs that we deliver to the organization and the value that we bring. And so I think through whether it's whatever we've done, we feel like we're bringing good value to the organization because we continue to get the support to spend the money and add the cost that we need to.
Yeah, and I think you would agree too, is it to sometimes take senior leadership to have that people-centric focus and where it carries down to everybody else. And I love that you shared that. I'm going to challenge you because you mentioned that you are a cost center, but when you look at the talent side of things, right, and a Gartner study in 2007 suggested that HR departments of yours, and I know Constellation Brands has this department, actually increased revenue by about 400 and some odd million. Because, right, when you're focused on the talent and the quality of talent and who you're selecting outside of a third party, that intrinsic value that it may not be as quantifiable as possible. Actually, you guys have more of an influence on the future direction of the organization than most would think. So I love that. And I know you guys are focused on like the ESG movement, and really Constellation Brands took it upon themselves to look at the diversity, equity, and inclusion. In a lot of organizations, it was more of a lip service. It was more of a marketing campaign. But here, Constellation Brands decided to move your headquarters to downtown Rochester, where some people have been avoiding for years and not going down there. Why was that so important to you and the team? And have you started to see how that's already impacted internally as you guys continue to talk about the move downtown?
Yeah, so there's a lot of excitement going on with our relocation downtown, which a couple of years out still, but in terms of build out, two years goes by pretty quick.
Yeah.
So we had the opportunity to explore different areas and buildings, for us to move into, both, within the suburbs, staying where we are today, or going downtown. And, we recognize that, Rochester is going through a revitalization effort, and we wanted to be part of that. And we wanted to get closer to our consumers, and the city of Rochester. And this is allowing us to do that. And so we feel very positive about what Rochester's doing. And, to have Constellation, there is, and I think about what, Constellation and the Sands families have done, throughout the years is philanthropically has been, fantastic. And, again, this is just another opportunity for us to give back and be in an environment where I think we'll be able to create, other opportunities for folks in downtown. So you bring, 400 people downtown, we'll be spending money in coffee shops and restaurants and that sort of thing. And I think that's all going to be positive as we look at the, the economics here behind that as well.
Definitely. And thank you, because I think you're going to have other companies that want to follow your direction and your lead. So I know that's something that the Sands have to continue to do. So thank you for all the things that you're doing for our community here, Jim.
Yeah,
thanks.
One of the things that I'd love to know a little bit more, Jim, is, we talked about culture, and, you've got, as we said, 9,000 employees, kind of worldwide. How do you keep an organization that big and that diverse engaged? So from an engagement standpoint, can you share, maybe what your approach is to ensure that, you are spending the time listening to those employees, and then, doing what's needed in order to, create the action plans to keep that large group of employees engaged?
Yeah, no, put simply, we ask employees. And so we have a mechanism to do pulse surveys, throughout the organization. We've run numerous surveys over the last couple of years, as we've been managing through the pandemic, to understand where people's pain points are, how can we help address and solve for issues that people are experiencing. So, that's something that's been incredibly helpful to us, during this time. But we also run, company-wide surveys. And so, within that, we're able to pinpoint, actions more broadly as an organization, but also more specifically within particular functions, because not all functions have sometimes the same challenges. And so that allows us to kind of get underneath there and be, pretty honed in on addressing, what's going on. We have sort of a 1, 2, 3 approach. You take, one area, do 2 things about it, and talk about it 3 times throughout the year. To our action planning. And so that's been an effective, tool for us. You can't boil the ocean, but you can kind of take, the top, issue that a group is having and do something impactful with it. And we've had some success around that.
Have you noticed, just talking about it, because we were talking with Adam Gibson a few episodes ago, talking about sometimes the goal setting, right, is a win for the business and the team, right? It's almost like that's enough. But he talked about kind of what you're saying and suggesting is that plan changes, especially here in 2022, when change is inevitable with this global economy that we're in. I guess, did you notice when you implemented, I guess, revisiting that goal 3 times a year, did you see the increase in effectiveness of like just the implementation, the project itself, the progress towards the goal? What did you notice when you started talking, I guess, about that more frequently?
Well, so I would say, taking an approach like that allows you to, course correct along the way. So, as the year goes on and you said, hey, this is where we're going to focus in on, you get 3 months into it and go, is it hitting the mark? Are we doing what we set out that we're going to? And if not, then let's course correct. And so I think that's the benefit of it, is that you just don't, continue to do something, throughout the year and hope it's working without checking in on it. Otherwise we're not being effective leaders and moving the needle in that regard. So, I feel like coming back to it 2 or 3 times throughout the year allows you to make sure that, the countermeasures that you've implemented are working. And if not, then you kind of course correct and tweak. And I think that's the beauty of, kind of coming back to it a couple of times.
So cool. Because I would venture to ask, right? How many times did you set a goal and it did not change throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very simple.
Yeah.
Just things happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny. We're going through goal setting, here in the next couple of weeks, and like to think more broadly as an organization. You have revenue targets and that sort of thing, and those things don't change very often. But as you get down to some specifics within certain functions, yeah, I mean, you have some broad goals, but you got to make adjustments along the way for challenges that may surface. So you got to be
Love
nimble.
that. And one of the things that we're starting to hear more and more about right now too is performance, right? And it's going to be, Chris and I were joking about it this morning. I said, mark my words, I think performance is going to be that next keyword within HR, right? When we're spending more for talent, right, we need to understand what the value is that they're providing back to the organization. And without set metrics or set goals or expectations, how do we know that they're providing that much value that we're providing now in additional costs for human capital? What are you guys starting to do? And I know you guys have probably been much more in tune with inputs for desired outputs there at Constellation Brands being more data driven. But is performance management something on the pipeline for you guys or on the whiteboard for HR to really get your arms around as you guys continue to evolve and reskill and upskill your workforce?
Yeah, so performance is a process that we've been working on for the last year and a half, call it 2 years, to evolve. We've gone from doing reviews once a year, managers and employees feeling like they have to write War and Peace, at the end of the year to kind of document what they've done. Managers are having to do to do something more frequently throughout the year, and so. This past fiscal year for us, we implemented these changes where we're doing quarterly check-ins with folks. And so we have a cadence and a process, within those check-ins to have good dialogue, because that's what it's all about. It's about having good conversation between manager and employee on what's working well. And if something needs to be course corrected, you're talking about that versus it all being done at the end of the year where it's sometimes too late. And so we've gotten more efficient and effective and simplifying our processes this past year. And we've gotten some great feedback from our managers and employees, with the process that we put forth. So yeah, I think more and more organizations are moving to that type of model. And it's something that, had been on our radar for a couple of years. And, we feel good that, we've looked to address that and are having some good success this year with it.
Right.
And you're just increasing the communication, and that's huge because that's not static, like you said. Just like setting the plan is not static because it's constantly changing and evolving. That socioeconomic complex outside of our walls that we have zero control over. So right. I love that, and I know your level of commitment is just really increasing the level of communication to bring more understanding and awareness. So that's huge. Thank you for that, Jim.
Well, I think it also goes along the lines of the hybrid workforce as well too, because you're not all in the same place all the time. So having that observation or making those check-ins, that's just another touch point that managers can have with their employees in order to, make sure everything's still on track. And you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we try to embed it in, we recognize that a lot of managers and employees have one-on-one discussions. And so, this process was really intended to be a bolt-on to that, touch point that people are already having. Just formalize it a little bit with a couple of questions to ask. And then document thereafter, just so you have a record of the conversation. And so, like I said, it's one of those things where we try to take some of the administrative burden off folks because everybody's got so much going on, and really bolt on again with existing conversations that typically already take place. So it's been pretty effective for us.
And what was the buy-in for that from the management level as you're proposing the new changes, and how did that go?
So, one of the things that I think we do well at Constellation is we do touch base with stakeholders before we roll out programs. So we want to get voice of customer from folks. And so, at the end of, previous performance cycles, you'd hear, gosh, this is very administrative. Well, why do we got to go through this? We spend so much time on whatever, and we listen. And so when we come up with solutions, we take that and we speak to leadership teams and say, this is what we're thinking about doing with performance. What do you think? What would you change? What would you do differently? And so that when we get to the point where we're actually rolling it out, we've really done a good job of taking in input from stakeholders and find that the effectiveness of rolling these out goes very well because of that.
That's great.
'Cause you're getting, and do you feel like it's because they're a part of the process and they feel more involved, and that's why you're getting their buy-in?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think as HR practitioners, sometimes where we can fall short is by holding up in a room, coming up with this great pencil and delivering that to the organization when they wanted a pen, and a
Guilty.
red pen.
Guilty.
So um, it's one of those things where you need to have
You're right.
input. And I would say
100%.
across all of our center-led functions, whether it be in comp or benefits or talent management, we're always trying to get input and buy-in. Sometimes it takes a little longer to get to the end game, but we found, and I found historically, that once you do that, you do get the leaders buy-in, and you can have those healthy debates with folks. We may not always agree, and we may end up going a direction where they didn't necessarily want to go, but they've at least been heard and listened to, and at the end of the day, then it's easier to get buy-in from folks.
So being such a large organization, and you mentioned that, I loved how you put that, center-led functions, right? You talked about compensation. I'm having conversations daily about that, right? Then you mentioned benefits. Then you mentioned just overall like human capital strategy, right? How do you, in such a large organization, and understanding that even HR is siloed, if you will, how do you ensure that these conversations are happening across these center-led functions? Because a lot of them do touch each other, especially from the talent attraction, retention, development, and engagement perspective. How do you guys as a team or as a function within HR keep your lines of communication so you're not doing dual data entry or dual efforts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we are our stakeholders as well internally to HR. And so we have a very strong human resource leadership team. And we talk regularly. And so we're updating each other on, programs, philosophies, that we may be seeing and wanting to test with each other. And, we have great dialogue and good debate along the way. And, in those meetings, we again may disagree at times, but when we leave the meeting, we've all stacked hands with the direction that we're going to go, be it in whether it be a compensation or benefits or talent management type decision. So we've created an environment with each other where we feel safe to have healthy debate and good discussion as we look at evolving our function each year over year. And so I think that's a testament to the people that we have, our leaders, and again, it's been an effective way for us to manage the question that you asked there, Kev.
Great. Jim, I'd love to know, just over the course of your career, and just in the various roles you had, what were some of, like, maybe one or two kind of big aha moments for you, just from your own learning, growth, and development aspect? Were there certain things that you were working on, or projects or experiences that you just kind of took a step back and was like, wow, that kind of taught me something about how to be a more effective leader, or really how to, provide the value that I'm looking to do, or build that relationship? Anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I would say, one of the things that was pretty impactful for me was, a company I worked with in the Southern Tier here. And it was a company called Gunlock. And it was my first exposure to this idea of continuous improvements and taking Kaizen and principles of lean manufacturing and applying that not only to the operations, but also to the administrative functions like HR and finance and legal and stuff like that. So for me, that was a really big aha in trying to understand the tools to always get better. And at times, we can get complacent and think, well, this is good enough. But in that environment and that culture, we always wanted to get a little bit better. Someone told me there's no best, only better. And so that's sort of something that's always stuck with me, ever since I worked at Gunlock. And so, you try to carry that into the other roles that you have, and looking at things with a continuous improvement mindset. Companies like Danaher are very good. They have something called their Danaher business system, which is fantastic. And again, they're pretty disciplined in their approach. And then organizations adapt things a little differently along the way. But I think as an HR practitioner, that's something that's always helped me, is always have an eye towards, all right, this is how we do it today. and it may be working, but is there a way that we could do it a little bit better, more effective, get a little more value out of it? So I feel like that's something that, has been helpful to me as I've navigated my career, and try to push my team to be thinking that way. And we do a pretty good job at, evolving and rethinking some of our processes.
That's great.
Just like you said, finding the best way to do things, I think, is always having us ask the question why, and then why helps us kind of peel back that onion to really find some of the root causes to these symptoms that we may be facing as a business and really cure the disease that might be going on. One of the things that I love is this the continuous improvement, just that model that you mentioned, because we're moving into that direction, right, Jim? We're talking about new technology coming available, which will require new skills, skills that may previously not exist today within the workforce. Making that continuous learning environment a key priority or a top priority for a lot of organizations to develop their people into tangible revenue generating human capital, right? And we're also seeing some things outside of just what we thought human capital was, and we're seeing spokes off of now human capital, from PR to marketing to all these other things. What are you guys starting to do as you identify where the future needs of the organization are headed? So you're setting that right foundation that I know you guys are focused on, because you did it for performance management, but setting up that continuous learning environment with across that 8,000 to 9,000 employees that you have today.
Yeah, so we have a learning platform that we refer to as our University of Constellation Brands, and we have different silos within that to help address people's learning journeys. And so whether it's something that's going to be more self-directed, we have a platform called LinkedIn Learning that allows people to go out and self-select any particular area that they want to better themselves in. And then we also have specifically led training for folks, whether it be in new managers, mid-level managers, or executives. And then we also do things around experiential learning, and that's all about role development, or finding the right opportunity and being intentional about moving somebody into a different position to get the skill sets and development that they need. So those avenues help us in making sure that we are developing our folks along the way, and that really drives engagement. You see a lot of people leave today because they don't. I'm not saying a lot of people leave organizations because they're not getting what they aspire to do within their careers. And so having conversations with folks about what their aspirations are, and then being open and honest with them about the development needs that they have, really kind of direct us to the type of training or jobs or experiences that they need to be successful. So that's how we're addressing and working to invest in human capital along the way. And I feel like we're doing a good job of it. It doesn't mean that people don't. I think
you're doing a great job. I think from just you guys probably are seeing an influx of candidates applications and not really spending as top of dollar from a marketing perspective or PR perspective that some of these other employers probably are facing today. And one of the things that you said is just that comfortability with change, and the change is inevitable. And what we do in HR and how we provide value is also going to change with it. And that's something that I think that you've been very successful over your career, is keeping your pulse as to, well, how do I add value, right? Yeah. And if I'm adding value, then that improves or increases my relationship with others within the organization. And therefore I can get the financing necessary to do some of these programs that we know are very important. So I love that. We talk about on this show, as we're wrapping up, is the revolution of HR for the evolution of business. And I think you touched on some of where we're headed in the future of work. When I say the revolution of HR for the evolution of business to you, Jim, what does that mean in context to the future of work and where we're headed?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the reality of people working remote and not being in offices is a reality that we're going to have to be, dealing with in the future. This sort of distributed workforce is something that if you're not allowing employees to do, is probably a competitive disadvantage to organizations. And so how do we accept that and allow employees to thrive in that space, I think is going to be something that HR folks are going to have to deal with, now and into the future. And so with that's going to come challenges. I'm not, I can't say specifically what they all are, but we need to be open and honest with employees along the way that if it's working to be remote, great. If it's not, what can we do differently? With that continuous improvement mindset to make sure that it's working, for all parties involved. So that's exciting. For me, we're a manufacturing organization, so obviously we can't do that remote. You got to be on site. So those things will continue. But the functions that support those businesses is something that we're going to see more people working from home. And at the end of the day, it's going to allow companies to also probably get some pretty good talent that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily get having to relocate somewhere, for a job. So those are exciting. Those are exciting challenges, and we're going to be in the forefront of it all with an HR from an HR perspective.
I love that, because that's the whole reason why we do this show, right? It is an exciting time to really be in HR and to really revisit or reevaluate, what our role is and what our function is within the organization, because no more is it just the administrative, no fun party planning police, right? I think we're starting to see where we can really add value. And I think that is what HR professionals at the end of the day want, is just what everybody else wants. They want to be listened to, they want to be valued, and they want to be heard. And sometimes that takes us to work on our communication, upskill or reskill and data literacy and storytelling. These are the ways that we can start building our accountability and raise our accountability within the organization. So we stop putting things on lists, like you said, Jim, and not crossing anything off, because that's only really deteriorating our relationship internally with senior leadership and the value and potential value that we can add in the role itself. So I'm excited. You're excited. I want to thank you and your team over at Constellation Brands, because I know you guys fight to make the best people that you possibly can within the organization. And in turn, just like you guys moving downtown, you see that you have that impact on the community, whatever you can donate, but also how can you improve the lives of the individual to improve the community as collectively as a whole. So thank you so much for all the hard work that you're doing. And thank you for being a guest on the HR Revolution with us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thanks again.